Late one night, Choi was heading home from work, following his usual route. As he passed by an alley, he heard a commotion. What was going on down there, he thought, but he chose not to investigate. The next morning, while getting ready for work, he turned on the TV and saw a tragic local news report. There had been a murder. Strangely still, the crime had taken place just off the road that he'd walked the previous night. That's terrible, Choi thought. Was that what I heard on my way home? Oh, that could have been me. I better be more careful. That night, he took a different route home and made sure to leave work early before it got too dark. As he was relaxing later, the doorbell rang. Checking the monitor, which displayed a camera feed like a Ring doorbell, he saw a police officer standing outside.
Sorry to call so late, but I'm with police,
the officer said, and Choi quickly opened the door. Excuse me, I'm from the police station. Are you alone in the house, sir? Yeah, I am. Is there something that I can help you with? Choi asked. Well, I am spreading awareness and asking some questions. You may have heard about the recent incident in the area. It was even on the news. I'm reaching out to residents to see if anyone saw or heard anything that might help us. Are you talking about the murder case? I wouldn't phrase it that way, but yes. The culprit has not yet been caught. I'm just wondering if you noticed anything that could give us a lead. Well, no, not really. Sorry. I don't think that I can help. Not especially. I see. Well, if anything comes to mind, please don't hesitate to call. It's good to talk, the officer said, scribbling a number on a post-it note and handing it to Choi before leaving. A few days later, Choi was getting ready for work again while the TV was on in the background. An update to the murder case had appeared. He guessed that the police had finally caught a lead. Relieved that the murderer was no longer on the loose, he turned to the screen to see the face of the suspect. And he froze. The relief he'd felt moments before had vanished. The culprit was the very same police officer who had visited his home. The murderer had posed as an officer, trying to find out if anyone had seen him the night of the crime. Had Choi told the fake police officer that he had heard something in the alley that night? Who knows what may have happened? Though this is an urban legend, all throughout Japan there have been real cases of criminals disguising themselves as business people, door-to-door salesmen, and even maintenance workers. And this just isn't a problem in Japan. The lesson? Be prepared and cautious when strangers come to your door. You never know who they might really be, or be what they seem. I'm sure that many of you have heard of this one before. I know I have. But my good friend, Jay Nightmares, a fellow narrator and the scriptwriter for this video, has translated roughly 3,000 words in the hopes of bringing a fresh perspective to the classic urban legend, based on information from the original source language. Teke Teke is a well-known urban legend from Japan. It emerged in the 1980s and spread throughout the 1990s by word of mouth. Even today, you can hear it referenced in pop culture and find countless videos about it on YouTube. Teke Teke is the spirit of a high school girl, and she appears without the lower half of her body. It's said that she lost her legs in a tragic accident, but despite this, she moves by crawling with her hands and elbows, making a distinctive sound, which is where the name Teke Teke comes from. It is a word mimicking the eerie noise that she makes as she moves. The legend of Teke Teke became so popular that it transcended the realm of urban legends, inspiring ghost stories, manga, and even movies. Some even consider Teke Teke to be a type of yokai. So, what does Teke Teke do? Primarily, she haunts schools and is said to chase students at terrifying speeds. While she usually is described as female, there are some versions of the story where Teke Teke is male. In some tales, she can fly, but she always is depicted carrying scythes. As with so many urban legends, there are different versions of the story, and in some, Teke Teke is also referred to as a Kashima-san. The typical structure of the Teke Teke story involves explaining how she became a vengeful spirit, followed by a chilling warning that she will appear to anyone who hears the story within a set time frame, heightening the fear. For this story, the setting is in Japan in high school. A boy stays after school a little later than usual, and as he leaves, the building is nearly empty. He notices a beautiful girl through a ground floor classroom window. She looks right at him with her arms folded. He's certain that he's never seen her before. he would have remembered someone so striking. She must be new, he thinks, perhaps a transfer student. Their eyes meet, and the girl smiles. But then, he notices something terribly wrong. She doesn't have the lower half of her body. The moment that he realizes this, she leaps out of the window and rushes towards him. He feels paralyzed by shock. The girl, moving with nothing but her hands and elbows, charges at him with tremendous speed. The sound that she makes as she approaches is unnerving. In an instant, she cuts him down with her weapon of choice, a scythe, or sometimes two, leaving him dismembered just like her. Within 3 days, anyone who hears this story is said to be haunted by her. No matter how fast you run, you will not escape. She is far too quick. So beware, and listen carefully for the sound. Some rumors claim that saying Teke Teke 3 times will summon her. If that's true, imagine how much trouble I'm in for telling you this. But who is Teke Teke, and how did she come to be? According to one prominent rumor, the legend originated in Hokkaido. One winter night, a high school girl was tragically hit by a train at a railway crossing in Muroran. In some versions, like the Aomori Prefecture, she's struck by a snowplow instead. The speed and the weight of the train severed her body in two, leaving her with the horrifying appearance that she is known for. When police and forensics arrive, they began the gruesome task of collecting her remains, her feet, her shins, and her thighs. But as they approach her upper body, they hear a faint voice, meaning help me. The word Teke mimics the sound that she makes, as we mentioned earlier. The officers were horrified to see her still alive, crawling along the ice with her hands and elbows. She had been reported dead and cold. The fatal impact should have ensured that. Even if she had survived the accident, the freezing Hokkaido weather should have sealed her fate. Yet, there she was, defying all odds. As her voice grew weaker, the officers made a grim decision. Believing there would be nothing that they could do, they left her, covering her with a plastic sheet as she slowly succumbed to her injuries in the icy cold. It is said that her spirit continues to wander, searching for her missing lower body. Filled with rage, she envies those who still have theirs. If Teke Teke comes for you, how do you escape? You may be able to stall her by chanting "Go to hell" or "Go back to hell." This might give you enough time to flee, but only temporarily. Interestingly, she is also known by other names in different stories. Spirits like her, who lack the lower half of their bodies, are sometimes referred to as Toko Toko or Hijutake. She is also known as Kanako Nakan, mimicking the sound or knocking, or Pata Pata, representing the noise of her elbows hitting the ground. Some descriptions even mention her internal organs trailing behind her as she moves, making her appearance even more terrifying. A similar urban legend from Hokkaido is that of the Sashan. In this story, a 14-year-old girl named Sakiko Kiratan was crossing railway tracks when her foot got stuck. She was hit by an oncoming train, severing her body in half. A student from her school found it amusing and spread her story, nicknaming her Sashan. Shortly after, he suffered the same fate, dying from blood loss, with half his body never being found. There is also a theory that Teke Teke's true identity is Kashime Riko, but that's a tale for another time. In most depictions, Teke Teke carries a scythe, rending her victims with the same fatal wounds that she endured. She forces them to experience the same gruesome fate that she suffered. In 2009, a film was released about Teke Teke, which became popular enough to spawn a sequel on the same day. With that, be cautious over the next few days, and keep your ears open for any sound resembling rushed hands or elbows moving across the floor. This urban legend dates back to 1955, or year 30 of the Showa period. Have you seen this sign before? If you have been to Japan or watched any Japanese movies or TV shows, you might recognize it. Apparently, there was an announcement that the government was going to create new pedestrian crossing signs. They decided to involve the public with this project. They set up a campaign and shared it with the public, asking for photo submissions for a new pedestrian sign. Then they would pick a photo to base the design on for the sign to show. The aim wasn't to make a sign using the photo, but use the subjects in the photo or illustrations to design an easy-to-understand sign. Submissions came in from all areas of the country. There were hundreds of illustrations and photos. Among these submissions was a photo from a man who was only known as Mr. A. Mr. A was a photographer who lived in Kyushu, and his photo was selected to be the basis for the pedestrian sign. His photo was of a father and his daughter walking hand in hand. If you take a longer look at the finalized street sign, perhaps you can get a sense and imagine what Mr. A's photo would have looked like. The photo came from the street sign that we see today. However, little did Mr. A know that his camera had caught something sinister. The father and daughter walking hand in hand weren't as they seemed. On the day that Mr. A heard about the contest for the new pedestrian sign, he raced out with his camera to the streets. He searched for the perfect subject for his shot, and that's when he saw a father leading his daughter by the hand exiting a park. Seeing them walking together, Mr. A seized the chance and took the winning photo. He was very proud of his shot. He felt as if he had naturally captured a loving father-daughter moment. A few days after he submitted the photo, he was watching the news and was shocked to hear of a horrifying local crime. There had been a kidnapping, as well as a murder. The face of the killer and the victim was shown on the screen. While he watched the news reported, Mr. A was filled with a strange sense of déjà vu. He thought that the faces seemed somewhat familiar. He couldn't quite place where he had recognized them from before, but he remembered the photo they had taken for the competition. What Mr. A thought was a photo of a father and daughter was actually a photo of a kidnapper and his victim. The girl died the day after his photo was taken. He later received a letter to state that his touching photo of a father and daughter had been chosen to win the competition. It was too late to go back. The signs that we see today were already in mass production by the time that he received his letter. So the next time that you see this sign, go ahead and take a closer look. Things aren't always as they seem. Have you ever felt that someone was watching you? I'm sure that you've felt that feeling. I think everyone must have. But have you ever felt that feeling in your own home? When you're sure that you were alone and the doors were locked. You look around the room, but you can't seem to find anyone there. You go back to whatever it is that you were doing, but that strange feeling of being watched won't go away. Try your best to ignore the feeling, it may save your life, and count yourself lucky that you didn't meet the eyes of the woman from the gaps. Tsukima Onna is an urban legend from Japan which gained notoriety on 2chan. The legend goes that this mysterious woman has the ability to appear in impossibly small gaps of a few centimeters or millimeters in gaps in walls, furniture, and pretty much any small gap in the everyday home. Sometimes she wants to play hide and seek with you, and other times she will stare at you and your sanity will ebb away, and other times she might even grab you and drag you into her world. For it is said that she lives in the gaps that separate our world from the planes of life. The origins of this urban legend date back to the Edo period, which started in 1603 and ended in 1868. A samurai called Negishi Yasumori wrote his story late in the Edo period. In short, the samurai made a collection of strange tales that he heard from all sorts of people from different walks of life, colleagues, the elderly, and friends over a period of 30 years. One of the stories that he gave the world was the story of the woman from the gaps that we know today. Although the story has changed over the years, it remains relatively the same. I will now read a supposed encounter with the woman from the gap. Y was a college student, but one day he suddenly stopped coming to class. His friends and classmates were worried about him and they tried to call him a bunch of times, but he never picked up. Two of his friends went over to his place to see how he was doing. As they approached his door, the exchange sounded like this. "Hey, Y, you alive in there?" E said as he rang the doorbell. And there was no reply. It seemed like the door was locked too. E then continues to call out, "Why are you away from college, man?" O then says to E, maybe he went back to his hometown because he was failing. The two of them went to leave but stopped when the door to Y's apartment opened and Y came out saying sorry to the pair of them. They said that Y was usually a really cheerful and funny guy, but when they saw him that day, he looked like the shell of his former self. Something was evidently wrong. He seemed thinner and less energetic. His friends questioned him. "Hey, what's going on with you, man? Everyone is really worried about you." E then replied, "Seriously, I'm fine, guys." E then says, "So, are you not eating properly or something?" "Who the hell are you, his mother?" O jokingly asks. "Oh wait, I know what it is. You got dumped, isn't it?" O then continued to follow up. "No, it's not like that," Y replies. "Well, if it's something embarrassing, then let's talk inside," O says as he barges past Y and walks into his apartment. They notice that Y's apartment was really messy, and the curtains were drawn even though it was the middle of the day. E walked over and grabbed the curtains. "Well, come on, man, don't just sit here in the dark." O then followed up by saying, "There you go again," being his mom. "Don't open the curtains!" Y yells at his friends. "I don't want to see her." The two friends started giggling and smirking at one another. They thought that their friend had been hiding something from them. And so they began searching his room, but it wasn't a big place that Y owned, so they quickly found that there wasn't a woman hiding out there. "Guess she must have gone home, huh?" O jokes at him. And then Y replies, "No, she's still here. Look over there if you really want to see her, but don't stare too long." Y then raises a shaking hand and pointed at the wall. Looks of concern fell over the faces of their friends, and one of them asks, "Are you okay, man? Seriously." "She's there. She lives in there." In the area that Y was pointing to was a bookshelf next to the wardrobe. What do you mean?" "There. In the gap." Apparently Y was referring to the gap between the bookshelf and the wardrobe. E and O simply couldn't believe what they were hearing. Had their friend lost his mind? They had to look, though. They had to check it out. So in the darkened room, they leaned forward to see what was in the gap. The gap itself was apparently no wider than 5 centimeters or 2 inches wide. They peered into it and saw the impossible. There was a woman's eyes there in the 2-inch gap. They met the eyes of the woman in the gap, and she was staring at them. This is where the story ends, possibly to create a sense of lingering eeriness or leave it up to the reader's imagination as to what happened next. Other variations involve a man going to the refrigerator late at night to grab a beer and seeing a woman in a 10 centimeter or 5-inch gap. She was between the back of the fridge and the wall. And it ends with the guy vowing not to go to the kitchen that late again and questioning who the hell the woman was. There is, however, a lighter version of this story in which a guy sees a woman from the gap and ends up striking a bit of a romance with her. The story concludes with him feeding her so she can get back to normal human size. However, it is strange that a legend that has been around since the 1800s, it makes you wonder if some of the accounts witnessed from the people from the gaps could be true. In the shadows of Japanese folklore, few figures elicit a more chilling fascination than the Rokurokubi. These haunting yokai are supernatural beings, embodying a nightmarish blend of beauty and terror, reflecting a deep-seated fear and moral lessons that resonate through the ages. With the grotesque ability to stretch their necks to horrifying lengths at night, Rokurokubi become nightmarish specters, straddling the line between the mundane and the monstrous. This exploration plunges into the origins, characteristics, variations, and contemporary interpretations of the Rokurokubi, revealing a tale that continues to send shivers down the spine of those who dare to engage with it. To grasp the chilling nature of the Rokurokubi, one must first understand the broader context of the yokai in Japanese culture. The term yokai encompasses an eerie array of supernatural entities, including spirits, monsters, and entities that defy the natural order. Emerging from the ancient animistic beliefs, where natural phenomena were imbued with the malevolent intent, these figures evolved over centuries, taking shape in the imaginations of a society that both feared and revered the unknown. The Rokurokubi emerged from the dark corners of the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, a time when undercurrents of urbanization masked shadows of despair and dread. As literacy surged and stories spread throughout literature, theater, and visual arts, the legends of yokai crept into the consciousness of people. The Rokurokubi, with their terrifying transformation and unsettling narratives, quickly became subjects of fascination in woodblock prints, kabuki theater, as well as folklore. In haunting artwork from this period, Rokurokubi are often depicted in their dual forms, charming women during the day and monstrous creatures at night. The image of the elongated neck, twisting and writhing in the darkness, become a terrifying symbol of the transformation, evoking not just fascination, but visceral fear. Such depictions solidified their place in Japanese folklore, echoing through the ages like a whisper in the dark. Typically, Rokurokubi are portrayed as ordinary women leading seemingly normal lives, and by day, they embody kindness, gentleness, and traditional feminine ideals that society reveres. But as twilight descends, their true nature is unveiled, and horror begins. Their necks elongate and twist, granting them the grotesque ability to spy on unsuspecting victims or roam the night in search of prey. This metamorphosis serves as a chilling reminder of the duality of human nature, evoking themes of hidden darkness lurking beneath the surface. Numerous legends surround the Rokurokubi, sending chills down the spine, each providing a glimpse into the eerie character and unsettling symbolism. One of the most chilling tales recounts the story of a Rokurokubi who falls deeply in love with a human man. By day, she captivates him with her charm and beauty, weaving an enchanted spell that blinds him to the truth. Yet, as night falls and shadows deepen, her terrifying transformation occurs. Desperate to conceal her monstrous identity, she tries to maintain the facade of normalcy, but the darkness cannot be contained. The man eventually discovers her horrifying secret, her neck stretching and twisting like a serpent in the night. In some versions, he is paralyzed by terror, fleeing from the woman he once loved. In others, he embraces her, acknowledging that love can transcend the monstrous. This tale captures the dread of betrayal and the fear of the unknown, where even the most beautiful face can hide unspeakable horrors. Another harrowing legend tales of a woman cursed to become a Rokurokubi due to her selfishness and cruel deeds. Initially, she leads a life steeped in deceit and manipulation, reveling in her power over others. However, the universe has a way of meting out justice, and her punishment comes swiftly as she is transformed into a Rokurokubi, doomed to confront the consequences of her actions every night. This dark narrative serves as a moral warning. Selfishness breeds monstrosity, and the monstrous can easily be reflected of one's own inner darkness. In a more sinister interpretation, some stories portray Rokurokubi as predatory beings that stalk the unwary in the dead of night. A traveler, wary and unsuspecting, encounters a seemingly innocent woman who beckons him closer. But as the night deepens, dread settles in, and shadows stretch ominously and whispers flit through the air. Just as trust takes root, the woman's neck twists grotesquely and terror unfurls as the realization of her true nature dawns. These tales invoke a palpable fear, illustrating how danger can lurk in the familiar, where the line between safety and horror is dangerously thin. The Rokurokubi in these narratives symbolize the nightmares hidden within our everyday lives, reminding us that even the most benign appearances can conceal malicious intentions. The chilling realization that even those who seem harmless may be the very monsters that we dread, intensifying the horror and leading us to question what lurks behind the masks that we wear. In yet another eerie variation, a traveler finds refuge in an inn, greeted by a beautiful woman whose kindness belies the horror that awaits. As night envelops the world, strange occurrences plague the traveler. Faint whispers echo through the halls, and shadows shift in the corner of his vision, and disquieting sensations of being watched cling to him. Eventually, he catches a glimpse of her true form, her neck elongating grotesquely in the darkness. Terrified, he flees, leaving behind the lingering awareness that the inn is haunted by the spirit of a Rokurokubi. eternally bound to our past transgressions. This story highlights the dread of unsolved guilt and the haunting specters of choices made, echoing the notion that our darkest action may return to haunt us in terrifying ways. The Rokurokubi legends brim with chilling symbolism and deeply unsettling themes. Central to their tales are concepts of duality, transformation, and the shadowy nature of humanity. The stark contrast between the ordinary human form and the grotesque yokai identity embodies the complexities of human nature, evoking feelings of both empathy as well as horror, as audiences grapple with the idea that we all harbor darkness within. The fear of confronting our own monstrous sides grow even more potent.